Welcome back, kids. You get an extra bonus today. You get 2 videos instead of 1. And we won't charge you anything extra. Free. You get an extra one. No, somehow or other, to prove that this material energy, and even the energy of the material creation that we're discussing here in the Bhagavatam, that Krishna's discussing, Prabhupada's discussing, is imperfect. We just lost our connection somehow or other. Now it's back? Okay, welcome back everybody. So you'll notice that this video is now beginning on text 30. And we started on text 17. So we're moving right along. Welcome back. Hare Krishna. Okay, so let me see. It was just detected by the devotees who are listening. So we're going to start on text 30 from the beginning. So you're going to hear a little bit of duplicate, but don't worry. This is very hard stuff to understand anyway, so the more times you hear it, the better. Text 30. When there was a desire to think, maybe everyone lost the train of thought. Maybe everyone blanked out, and so the thing just couldn't go on. Not easy to keep oneself fixed. It's easier to read, actually, than it is to hear. But I want to make one point, and that is, to my perception, it's so much easier to keep the mind clear and hearing this stuff, especially by hearing it out loud in the association of other devotees. It's always easier, but in intricate details like this of the creation, it's much easier than if you're just turning the pages and all of a sudden it starts to go through all the stuff and you're going, whoa. You know? I mean, I recommend to everybody that they read out loud, even to themselves. I know it's slower, you know, and you may not think you're going, you know, through enough material but it's very good, you know. It's easier to hear, it's easier to remember, easier to keep your train of thought. Text 30, again. When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, determination, and all desire became manifested. Purport. The heart of every living entity is the seat of the Supersoul, Paramatma, a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without his presence, the living entity cannot get into the working energy according to his past deeds. The living entities who are conditioned in the material world are manifested in the creation in terms of respective inclinations inherent in them, and the requisite material body is offered to each and every one of them by the material energy under the direction of the Supersoul. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10. So what it means is that we already heard that the previous desires, the unfulfilled desires, are coming. Each soul is coming into the material creation with them, but they can't access them until this happens, that the universal form is created, and the Lord gives that access through the Supersoul. So the form direction from the Supersoul to the soul, and the spiritual intelligence to the material intelligence, and so on, is the direction from the Supersoul to the soul. And that gives us access to this information. It's like you got a software on there, and you don't have the password or something. You can't get it. It's there, but you can't get into it, which can be very frustrating. If anybody's had that happen to them, I'm sure most people have. Okay. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10. When, therefore, the Supersoul is situated in the heart of the conditioned soul, the requisite mind is manifested in the conditioned soul, and he becomes conscious of his occupation as one is conscious of his duty after waking up from slumber. Therefore, the material mind of the living entity develops when the Supersoul sits on his heart, after which the mind, the controlling deity moon, and then the activities of the mind, namely thinking, feeling, and willing, all take place. The activities of the mind cannot begin without the manifestation of the heart, and the heart becomes manifested when the Lord wants to see the activities of the material creation. Text 31. And we're thinking we're doing all this, right? Translation. The 7 elements of the body, namely the thin layer of the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. Interesting. So the life breath, the subtle life, is there's water there, and there's water also in the gross form. How important is water? Purport. The construction of the whole material world is prominently made by 3 elements, namely earth, water, and fire. But the life force is produced by sky, air, and water. So water is the common element in both the gross and subtle forms of all material creation. And it should be noted herewith that due to necessity, water, being most prominent in the material creation, is the principal element of all the 5. This material body is thus an embodiment of the 5 elements, and the gross manifestation is perceived because of 3, namely earth, water, and fire. Sensations of touch are perceived due to the thin layer of the skin, and bone is as good as hard stone, except when it breaks. The breathing air of life is produced of sky, air, and water, and therefore open air, regular bath, and ample space in which to live are favorable for healthy vitality. Fresh produce from the earth, like grains and vegetables, as well as fresh water and heat, is good for the upkeep of the gross body. Text 32. The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Purport. Illusioned by the material nature, the living entity identifies with false ego. More clearly, when the living entity is entrapped by the material body, he at once identifies with the bodily relationships, forgetting his own identity as spirit soul. This false ego associates with different modes of material nature, and thus the senses become attached to the modes of material nature. Mind is the instrument for feeling different material experiences. But intelligence is deliberative and can change everything for the better. The intelligent person, therefore, can attain salvation from the illusion of material existence by proper use of intelligence. An intelligent person can detect the awkward position of material existence and thus begin to inquire as to what he is, why he is subjected to different kinds of miseries, and how to get rid of all miseries. And thus, by good association, an advanced intelligent person can turn towards the better life of self-realization. It is advised, therefore, that an intelligent person associate with the great sages and saints who are on the path of salvation. And how do you do that? You hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam. By such association, one can receive instructions which are able to slacken the conditioned soul's attachment for matter, and thus the intelligent man gradually gets rid of the illusion of matter and false ego, and is promoted to the real life of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. 33. Thus, by all this, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by gross forms, such as those of planets, which were explained to you by me. Purport. As explained in the Bhagavad Gita 7.4, the separated material energy of the personality of Godhead is covered by 8 kinds of material coverings: earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, false ego. You see? The separated material energy is covered by the 8 kinds of material coverings. So there's a subtle creation and a gross creation. And now it's being manifested. All these are emanations from the personality of Godhead as His external energy. These coverings are just like the coverings of clouds for the sun. The cloud is a creation of the sun, yet it actually covers the eyes so that one cannot see the sun. The sun cannot be covered by the clouds. The cloud can at utmost extend a few hundreds of miles in the sky, but the sun is far greater than millions of miles. So a 100-mile covering is not competent to cover millions of miles. Therefore, one of the various energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot, of course, cover the Lord. But these coverings are created by Him to cover the eyes of the conditioned souls who want to lord it over the material nature. Actually, the conditioned souls are covered by the illusory creative cloud of Maya, of matter, and the Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to their eyes. Because they have no eyes of transcendental vision, and because they cannot see the personality of Godhead, they therefore deny the existence of the Lord and the transcendental form of the Lord. The covering of the gigantic material feature is accepted by such men with a poor fund of knowledge, and how this is so is explained in the following verse. Text 34. Therefore, beyond this gross manifestation is a transcendental manifestation, finer than the finest form. It has no beginning, no intermediate stage, and no end. Therefore, it is beyond the limits of expression or mental speculation, and is distinct from the material conception. Purport. The gross external body of the Supreme is manifested at certain intervals, and thus the external feature or form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not the eternal form of the Lord, which has no beginning, no intermediate stage, and no end. Anything which has a beginning, interim, and end is called material. The material world is begun from the Lord, and thus the form of the Lord, before the beginning of the material world, is certainly transcendental to the finest or the finer material conception. Remember the first verse of the 4 slokas? I was there before, and then I manifested myself, and then I wound everything back up, and only I'm there at the end. The material world is begun from the Lord, and thus the form of the Lord, before the beginning of the material world, is certainly transcendental to the finest or the finer material conception. The ether in the material world is considered to be the finest. Finer than the ether are mind, intelligence, and false ego, but all 8 of the outward coverings are explained as outer coverings of the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth is therefore beyond the expression and speculation of the material conception. He is certainly transcendental to all material conceptions. This is called nirvisheshanam. One should not, however, misunderstand nirvisheshanam as being without any transcendental qualities. Visheshanam means qualities. Therefore, nir added to it means that he has no material qualities or variegatedness. This nullifying expression is described in 4 transcendental qualifications, namely unmanifested, transcendental, eternal, and beyond the conception of mind or word. Beyond the limits of words means negation of the material conception. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to know the transcendental form of the Lord. Text 35. Neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you from the material angle of vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know Him well. Purport. The impersonalists think of the absolute personality of Godhead in 2 different ways, as above mentioned. On the one hand, they worship the Lord in His Vishwarupa, or all-pervading universal form, and on the other, they think of the Lord's unmanifested, indescribable, subtle form. The theories of pantheism and monism are respectively applicable to these 2 conceptions of the Supreme as gross and subtle. But both of them are rejected by the learned pure devotees of the Lord because they are aware of the factual position. This is very clearly mentioned in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which records Arjuna's experience of the Vishwarupa of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. Adrishta purvam rishitosmi drishtva bhayena cha pravititam manome tadeva me darshaya deva rupam prasida devesha jagan nivasa. Arjuna, as a pure devotee of the Lord, never previously saw the contemplated universal form of the Lord, Vishwarupa. But when he did see it, his curiosity was satisfied. But because of his attachment as a pure devotee, he was not happy to see that form. Indeed, he was afraid to see such a gigantic form of the Lord. He therefore prayed to the Lord to assume his 4-handed Narayan form, or his Krishna form, which alone could please Arjuna. Undoubtedly, the Lord has the supreme potency to exhibit himself in multifarious forms, but the pure devotees of the Lord are interested in his forms as eternally exhibited in the abode of the Lord, known as the Tripad Vibhuti, or Kingdom of God. The Lord in the Tripad Vibhuti abode exhibits himself in 2 forms, either with 4 hands or with 2 hands. The Vishwarupa exhibited in the material manifestation has unlimited hands and unlimited dimensions, with everything unlimited. The pure devotees of the Lord worship him in his Vaikuntha forms as Narayana and Krishna. Sometimes the same Vaikuntha forms of the Lord are in the material world also by his grace, as Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, Sri Narasimhadeva, etc. And thus the pure devotees also worship them. Usually, the features shown in the material world have no existence in the Vaikuntha planets, and thus they are not accepted by the pure devotees. What the pure devotees worship from the very beginning are the eternal forms of the Lord existing in the Vaikuntha planets. The non-devotee impersonalists imagine material forms of the Lord, and ultimately they merge into the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord. Whereas the pure devotees of the Lord are worshippers of the Lord both in the beginning and also in the perfect stage of salvation, eternally. The worship of the pure devotee never stops, whereas the worship of the impersonalist stops after his attainment of salvation, when he merges into the impersonal form of the Lord, known as the Brahma Jyoti. Therefore, the pure devotees of the Lord are described here as vipaschita, or the learned who are in knowledge of the Lord perfectly. Text 36. He, the personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, qualities, pastimes, entourage, and transcendental variegatedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activities, he appears to be so engaged. Purport. Whenever there is a need of material creation, the transcendental personality of Godhead accepts forms in the material world for creation, maintenance, and destruction. One should be intelligent enough to know his activities in truth and not be biased to conclude that he descends to the material world by accepting a form created by material nature. Any form accepted from the material nature will be affected by everything done in the material world. A conditioned soul who accepts a material form for undergoing a certain term of material activities is subjected to the laws of matter. But here in this verse it is clearly stated that although the forms of the activities and the activities of the Lord appear to be the same as those of a conditioned soul, they are supernatural and impossible for the conditioned soul. He, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is always unaffected by such activities. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Namam karmani limpanti, name karma pale spriha, itimam yo bijanati, karmabir na sabhadyate. The Lord is never affected by the activities which he apparently performs by his different incarnations and personalities, nor does he have any desire to achieve success by fruitive activities. The Lord is full in his different potencies of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, and thus he has no reason for physical exertion like the conditioned soul. Therefore, an intelligent person who can distinguish between the transcendental activities of the Lord and the activities of the conditioned souls are also not bound by the reactions of activities. The Lord as Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva conducts the three modes of material nature. From Vishnu is born Brahma, and from Brahma is born Shiva. Sometimes Brahma is a separated part of Vishnu, and sometimes Brahma is Vishnu himself. Thus Brahma creates the different species of life all over the universe, which means that the Lord creates the whole manifestation either by himself or through the agency of his authorized deputies. And we will stop tonight there. Hare Krishna. We're getting just a little glimpse of what it means. God is great. So, time for reflection. Lots of things to reflect about in that reading today. Anything stand out in your mind, or did you follow it? Could you follow it? Could you follow it? Could you? Now, I've been told by two people who listen every night that here we need to, I need to repeat the questions, and in some cases the things that you're saying, because it's not picking up in the microphone, and they want to hear what you have to say. This is Gopal Prabhu the Sankirtan leader of the Welsh Yatra. Hare Krishna.
I was reflecting on. Do you think you were hearing how great God is?
He's reflecting, just like I just said, we were hearing about how great God is.
How he manifests of the material nature, material senses.
How he manifests material nature and material senses.
But the pure devotees aren't impressed.
But the pure devotees aren't impressed
By such things.
By such things. They're
actually more attracted and more impressed by.
They're more attracted and more impressed by
the more intimate conception of God.
The more intimate, eternal conception of God.
So God must be really, who God actually is, must be really, really.
So God therefore must be really, really great. I think that's a fair statement. I think you got that right. Very nice. I will say something about a reflection. I was impressed by this idea that anything material has a beginning and an end. And that's the difference. So if your mind is absorbed in things that have a beginning and an end, then you will always be frustrated. You will always be, restless. And you'll never be peaceful. Therefore, Krishna says again and again, man mana baba mad bhakto, just think about me. And this is part of what it means to think about Krishna, to hear these things and be able to kind of understand. And the other thing that I was reflecting on is the creation, and how the creation that's going on in a microscopic form, just the baby in the womb of the mother is being created, and the same procedure is going on as the universal creation. Just one is just humongous and one is very small, but the same procedure is going on. It's amazing how organized everything is. And the scientists, they're trying to prove that it happens by chance, but every time they go deeper into another deeper level, they find organization. There's no place where they can't. There isn't organization. So how can they think that it's happening by chance? So that's the overall effect of all of this material energy, material nature, is to cause the soul to be bewildered and to forget, that everything that he's been given in the world, in his own body and outside the body, and whatever he is moving outside of his control, any of us in control of the movements? No. Therefore, we can walk into a hurricane if we're not careful. So it's very important. This is real meditation, to meditate on these things is to separate ourselves out from the illusion so that we can see it objectively. Very interesting, isn't it? How everything was created and what the functions of all the parts of the body are. We don't think of those things commonly. We just respond and do. We act. We think we're acting on our own, but actually the Krishna and Super Soul, the demigods, and all these energies are personified in the spiritual world. The earth is personified, water is personified. All these have personified forms in the spiritual world. What else? Yes.
In the previous video,
we did this evening. Prabhupada.
In the previous videos we did this evening, don't forget there are 2 of them tonight.
Prabhupada was saying in the purport that I think he was trying to establish.
Prabhupada was saying in the purport he was trying to establish how
the soul is superior.
How the soul is superior
To the senses.
To the senses.
Because the soul can expand, or knowledge of the soul can expand to knowledge of the senses.
Because knowledge of the soul can expand to knowledge of the senses.
But the senses cannot expand to knowledge of the soul.
But the senses, yes, that's right.
I didn't. Well, it's more of a question. I didn't really understand, because I can understand how you can't perceive the soul because of its spiritual nature by the senses because of their material nature. But
yeah, you can't see or perceive spirit through the material senses. It's as simple as that. You can't see spiritual forms with the material senses. And therefore we're illusioned by the material body, by the material energy, by the material universe. We're separated from the Lord by that separated energy. The example was used of the sun and the cloud. The sun creates the cloud, and then the cloud appears to cover the sun. It doesn't actually cover the sun, but it just covers our eyes from seeing the sun. So the material energy is created by the Lord in order to give us a way to act, and at the same time not see the reality, which we don't want to see. And that's the key to this whole thing. We don't want to see it. We have to be awakened to our desire to be able to see properly has to be awakened. And that's the purpose of the material energy, and that's the purpose of the suffering and all the things that we go through, and that's the mercy of the Lord. If we stop trying to criticize, the things that happen to us that cause us to suffer or be unable to enjoy completely, that is Krishna's mercy. Because if it wasn't like that, then we'd just go on forever thinking we could somehow or other figure out how to enjoy here. We wouldn't think, how to inquire from a superior source. It's ironic, isn't it, or paradoxical, that whatever we learn in this world, we learn by hearing from an authority. Everything, from when we're parents, when we're children, babies, we ask, well, Dad, what's this, what's that, what's this, what's that? Our parents, educate us and tell us what a cup is and what your foot is and what everything is, what it's for. And everything we learn. Go to school, we learn from our teachers, learn from our older friends, different things, And we're thinking that we don't have to learn from a superior source about spiritual knowledge, real knowledge. This is ludicrous. Alex is going to type us a question. He's a techie. Huh? Yes, Mantri, yes.
Just because it's on what you were just saying, and that's the only thing I highlighted whilst we were reading.
Yeah. Mantri Raj highlighted one thing during the reading, and he's going to share it with us.
The intelligent person, therefore, can attain salvation from the illusion of material existence.
The intelligent person can therefore attain salvation from the illusion of material existence.
By proper use of intelligence.
By proper use of intelligence.
An intelligent person can detect the awkward position of material existence.
Intelligent person can detect the awkward position of material existence.
And thus begin to inquire as to what he
and thus begin to inquire as to what he is,
why
or what it is, what he is,
what he is,
what he is,
why he is subjected to different kinds of miseries,
why is he is subjected to different kinds of miseries,
and how to get rid of all miseries,
and how to get rid of all miseries,
and thus by good association,
and thus by good association,
an advanced intelligent person
can turn towards the better life of self.
Can turn towards the better life of
Self-realization. What's not to like?
You were just saying how not to criticize. If we can learn not to criticize the miseries,
Yeah.
and actually understand that they have a purpose.
Even the material philosophers, they are psychologists and people. They say, the distress, you should embrace it as a friend. The pain or whatever it is, that embrace it as a friend. And of course, they don't have the transcendental. Unfortunately, they don't have the transcendental knowledge to move to. But at least they try to become more comfortable. That's all it is, just to become more comfortable. Ignore it. Ignorance is bliss. 'Tis folly to be wise, where ignorance is bliss, they say. Are you going to read it for him?
Yesterday you mentioned that we need to go through the first 9 cantos and hear about the goodness of the Lord before we can understand the 10th canto. Otherwise, a person would mistake the pastimes of Krishna as something material. Could you please explain in a bit more detail what are the steps, how the first 9 cantos prepare the reader to understand the 10th canto, and maybe what is the purpose of each canto?
We already read that. The purpose of the 10 cantos are given. I don't remember exactly what they are, but they're creation, the sub-creation, the manus, the manvantaras, all the different, how it's ruled, and then liberation, like that. There's different subject matter, but it's not that each canto talks about just one thing. It's not mechanical like that. All of the subjects are talked about in each canto. And how it prepares us for hearing about Krishna's pastimes is that it describes how Krishna is, what the powers of Krishna are, what he's capable of doing. All the different incarnations that he appears in, why he does it, what the different missions that he does, and that way we get this sense of how Vishnu and Krishna are taking care of us, and and then we get a sense of who he is. So then when you hear the 10th canto, then when we hear of his human-like pastimes, in which he seems to act just like a human baby and grow up and do all these things. Of course, he's doing things that no one else can do, but this mundane philosophers just take it that he's just a regular, child with material body. Yeah? So without understanding his potencies and his unlimited strength and his unlimited energies, how could we possibly understand his transcendental pastimes? Because, we hear that in Goloka Vrindavan, for example, we forget that he's God. But actually we don't. We know he's God. But our relationship with him is so sweet. The love is so sweet that it covers that, I heard Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu give a kind of anecdotal description of kind of what it would be like. It's like if we come upon a really rare jewel, like millions of dollars worth of one jewel, somewhere on a wall or something, that's far, then we'll try to take it and, cash it in, and, get a nice life for the rest of our life. But in the spiritual world, everything's jewels. So it's no big thing. They don't even, the ground is jewels. Trees are made of jewels. Walls are made of jewels. Floors are made of jewels. It's like no big deal. They don't even think to take it and, save it and, Therefore, they're not distracted by those things in their relationship with Krishna. It's more, the Goloka Vrindavan is actually more opulent than any other realm, material or spiritual. But because the love of God there is completely spontaneous, therefore it covers everything else. Therefore we can taste real, natural, spontaneous emotions and feelings and exchanges of love with Krishna and with one another in the spiritual world. So how that is reflected in the material world is important to understand. There was in that one section where it describes how the sex thing, is so pleasurable, so that we will, have more, species of our species, and all the other species, because for the upkeep of the material world. Why? Because it's a place where we can actually go back to Godhead. So it has those features, it has those different purposes to give us a place to enjoy, like a big playpen, or like babies, or put in a playpen, and when we get a little bigger, we have to make the bigger playpen. Then we're a little bigger than just the yard, and it's a little bigger, and pretty soon we roam about the world thinking that we're free, but actually we're still in the spiritual world. We are in the spiritual world, but we're in the prison house within the spiritual world. So we've got all these laws of nature, and this thick coverings we can't go through to see anything real. Like if there was a prison house in Folkestone, then we might be living in there, be in there. We're still in Folkestone, but we can't interact with anything in Folkestone. We're interacting in an extra set of laws within Folkestone, But that doesn't mean we're not in Folkestone. So we're in the spiritual world, but we're in the covered walls of a prison house. Yes.
I'm just wondering, because we've been...
Deutscher. Finally got it.
So we've just been reading about how we're, in all aspects of our existence,
We've just been reading how in all aspects of our existence,
we're completely dependent.
We're completely dependent
on Krishna for everything.
Krishna for everything.
So with that understanding, when it comes to our own desires, how is it that we can develop a desire for loving Krishna and performing devotional service in the best possible mood?
By hearing. By hearing from the spiritual world. It's the same thing we were saying before. Everything we've learned by hearing from authority. So we learn about things that are beyond our perception by hearing from those who were there, beyond the place beyond our perception. So therefore, the knowledge in the Bhagavatam is called Vijnana. This is all Vijnana. It's not Jnana. It's Vijnana. This is Brahma explaining exactly what happened. He's explaining what he's seeing and what he's experiencing as the thing's developing. It's incredible. It's beyond material conception. It's beyond material words, but it isn't beyond words because it's being described by someone who's there. Just like you can't see the other side of that wall, what's over there, and we hear a noise or something, then we might try to understand what's over there, but you can't see beyond the wall. But if someone comes through that door, and what was that? Oh, it's this. Oh, okay. Then you know. Just like a little child may ask the father, "What's this?" It's a glass. Oh. And then his little friend comes to him and says, "What's this?" He says, "It's a glass." So he's giving perfect knowledge. He may not even understand what it is, what it means. So like that, we're getting transcendental knowledge. That's what this literature is. It's Shabda Brahma. It's eternal sound. And that eternal sound comes into the universe, and it gives the codes of how to, how Brahma can create it, put everything back in the same place. There's at the end of his day, then there's a partial devastation, and every time he gets up in the morning, he has to put the part of the universe back together again. You think you got problems when you wake up? You got to brush your teeth and comb your sika, and put on your clothes and take a bath and all that stuff. He has to recreate the universe. Beyond our conception. But you can see the progression. A person who has a lot of responsibility and it controls a lot, like a big business magnate or something, he gets up, immediately he's on the phone and all these problems are coming at him and he has to, somehow or other solve them and keep it from falling apart or put it back together if it is. Same thing, it's just in a larger scale. Like we heard about the creation and how everything was, each part how it was going. So the same thing happens in the creation of our own body. So we can actually see, in a small sense, what's going on in a larger sense. So why shouldn't we believe it? Why shouldn't we accept it? There was this one girl, this morning I was listening to Prabhupada, it was Atlanta, 1975, and she was Christian, and she said, so I don't remember exactly how it went, but she was saying that God couldn't have a form, and Prabhupada said, why not? And everybody started to laugh. Because it was so obvious, It says in the Bible, and she said it herself, that man is created in the image of God. So Prabhupada said, yes, that's right. In other words, if you hear something that's true, if it doesn't make where it's come from, it's true. Man is created in the image of God, therefore he has a form like God. She said, no. And he said, why not? And she was just, nobody said that to her before. Why not? It says in your own scripture, no, well, a long time ago, and then she started going to the singing. Prabhupada, everybody was laughing her out of the room, because it was so clear. So clear. We're created by the image of our mother and father, in the image of mother and father, and just keep going back and going back. And that description, there's one description, I think it's in the 3rd canto, because in each canto this is the same process is described in more depth, in more detail. And it's described how when the Lord, when those, elements are created, when they come out of the body of the Lord, and then they're reflected, his form is reflected into that energy. So it's not actually real form, the universal form that we're hearing about. It's just a reflection of his form in the material energy. So the universal form is not real in the sense that if you stood back from the universe and looked at it, you wouldn't see, Krishna going like, you wouldn't see a form like this. It's not like that. It's like a shadow, like just a reflection.
Isn't there a report in Bhagavad Gita where Prabhupada calls it a godless display of opulence?
Yeah, godless display of opulence. Yeah.
Actually calls it godless.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like God, but it's not God. But it's described to be like God, so we can get a conception in our mind of, a person.
One of the many ways in which Krishna reaches out to us, I guess.
Yeah, many ways that Krishna reaches out to us, yeah. Everything's in the Gita, It's amazing how he quoted that one verse in the Gita, in one of those purports in the 11th canto. How he was afraid. He saw the universal form, but he wasn't happy seeing it. He was like terrified. He almost lost consciousness. He said, okay, enough is enough, enough is enough. I want to see your form. And then Krishna says, yes, and this form that I'm showing you now, that's very difficult to see. It seems like counterintuitive that this form that he was always seeing before, but now he's seeing it fully because he just saw, the universal form. Now he has another dimension of, who Krishna is, and he's all falling all over himself to apologize for having called him Krishna and called him this and called him that, and things he might have said to him when they were just lounging around, or So full God consciousness is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And only if Krishna agrees to give us the intelligence, to perceive it, can we perceive it. Therefore, Prabhupada said, what we need to do is pray for the mercy of Krishna. Pray for Krishna's mercy. Because then we get Krishna's mercy, then we will be able to get everything. Act in a way that Krishna will want to see us. Then we'll be able to see him. Dedicate our whole lives to helping him, reclaim as many conditioned souls as possible. That's the purpose of the creation. Ultimate purpose of the creation. And if you're acting according to that ultimate desire of Krishna, then you are secure, completely secure. And gradually, over a lifetime, you will be free from fear and free from struggle for existence. We're already free. If you think about it, you're traveling here and there, but you're never worried about where your next meal is coming from, or just what Jam Gori cooks. It's like out of this world, And everywhere we go, we get Krishna Prasadam. It's mystical, Okay, gentlemen, I got to bed a little earlier last night and it worked. I got some deep sleep, which I hadn't gotten in about 6 days straight. So I'm going to continue the program. I'm going to get to bed early. Thank you so much for your association, your hearing. You got good ears, good hearts. It's more clear, isn't it? It's so much more clear when you hear it carefully read. like this in the company of the devotees. So much more clear. Proof of the pudding. So are you here tomorrow too?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We can hear more of the creation. Maybe we'll finish this second canto tomorrow together. Nice. All right, and all of you out in cyberspace, thank you very much. And don't forget, sharing, caring means sharing. So share this nectar with all your friends and let's spread the word. Spread the holy Bhagavatam. This is one of the goals, is to record the whole thing like this. I'm also going to make an audio book of the Bhagavatam for the BBT. That's what we're doing. We're going to do it together. Matt and me and Gora in Houston. And Chaitanya Charitamrita also. But this, in some ways, I like this better. Because we're going to have the whole Bhagavatam. We already had the Gita. We recorded the whole Gita in Houston. So you can actually just listen to the Gita all the way through, one installments, one after the other. It's very, very nice. With the devotees there and reflections and questions and answers and discussions. It's very nice. Prabhupada set up the movement that the Bhagavatam class would be done every day. But in some places, hardly anybody comes to the Bhagavatam class anymore. Many places. So this is our way of keeping the vibration going. Okay, so keep the vibration going, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Thank you.